working with my Festool track saw and my long track, as well as the parallel guides. Currently I'm doing a project where I'm going to build 6 cabinets out of AC plywood for a client's garage. So I'll be needing to do a lot of repetitive cuts. When I'm making my cuts, it won't move. It stays put. I've built miles of cabinets with it. I'm just very impressed with not having to spend time to clamp it down. What's really nice about the Festool track system, you put the edge right on your mark, right where the cut's going to go. You put it there, you make the cut. If you've got an angle, you just simply put the track on right on your marks at that angle and make the cut. If you need to do a compound cut where you need to roll, say, a 45 at an angle, say if you're doing some nice columns on a front porch, or you want to build a planter and you want to do some compound corners, then you can just roll the saw over to the degree that you want, and it'll cut right on that same mark, so you don't have to make any adjustments for that. So it's a well thought out system, and certainly pays for itself. The parallel guides, I use them when I'm doing a lot of repetitive cuts. If I am going right to a mark, I'm depending on my skills to make a mark and put the track in the right location. The saw is going to cut where I put it, so its accuracy is limited to my ability to put it in the same spot over and over again. With the parallel guides, I can set that up so that I'll get the cut over and over again. They slide onto the track and lock down, but they do hang off to the side. They don't sit on top. And so what that means is the way they're designed, they tend to tip down, so you sort of have to hold them in place and get them going. And once you're there, it's fine. But what I did was I made one little modification. I took some little pieces of aluminum. I did a little shower remodel and had the leftover shower track, and I just ran it through the table saw and made a couple of little 1.25" by 1.25" aluminum squares, and I just tapped in a couple of screws. It sits on top of the wood, so it holds the parallel guides in place. And since you have one on each end, when you have a long cut like an 8-foot piece of plywood, trying to get it lined up and held up there can be a little bit difficult when you're first starting. So that's one little modification that I wish Festool would do. It makes a lot of sense, and it's an easy modification though to do yourself. And then you slide them to the width of your material. This one's already on. I've got it up tight, and then I slide this one up tight, and all I have to do then is lock it in place and lock it down. And then the guides, I can move to my dimension, and then when the guides are put in position, those little tabs I added drop right on top and hold it up. Without these tabs, this wants to drop down, so you find yourself getting it nice and tight and holding it with your hand. So that's my fall off from one sheet of plywood, and it's nice and uniform all the way through. So when I'm making cabinets, the first thing I do is take all the plywood and rip it lengthwise for all of the parts. And even a small cabinet job, there's quite a bit of that. The sides and the bottoms, all are the same width. The shelves are just a little bit narrower. So going ahead and ripping all of the plywood down using the parallel guides as I showed is the way to do it. For the, to get the pieces exactly the same size over and over. And then when you have that odd piece, if you're doing something larger, or say the back on an island or a mantle, usually you're just doing the one piece or maybe two. So just making marks and laying the track down is just as easy as any method I can come up with. You can certainly use the parallel guides from the other side. So if you've got a 48-inch piece of plywood and you need a 36-inch, set it to 1 foot minus an eighth, because you can't set it right on the line. You've got to account for the blade width. All the plywood is broken down in the proper widths. Then I need to cross cut it. You have 10, 20, 40 pieces. You want something that's a little quicker, and also just you don't have to pull out a tape measure or think about it. So I made a fixture for my portable workbench. One of the things I made for my Festool track system was a system to hold things in place. I don't need to use a tape measure, and I know that I can get the cuts I want every time. So what this is it's just 2 long rails. I make everything out of plywood. I go through units of plywood between the cabinet making and the tools that I make. I'm just a real fan of plywood. So one rail has a fence on it with stop, and I just use my miter stand stop on this. And so I don't pull out a tape measure to cut my sides. I just set my stop to this. And to make sure that these are lined up, because I will be bolting the track down to it, I need to make sure it's square. So I know from the end of my bench it's square. So going tight to that, what I did with each of these rails is put a stop on this bottom edge here, and all I have to do is place this right, just caps right over the end, and I butt it tight to there. And then I just use some of the Festool clamps to clamp it to the bench. I just reach up into the 3/4 inch or 20 millimeter holes. Again, I know that's tight, and that pushes it tight to the table, and it'll keep it from shifting around on me. And the other side works similar. They're a little different shape. I don't have the fence on this one, and I've made it a little wider so that I can use this to actually do a full 48-inch wide piece if I want to cross cut a full sheet of plywood. So there's about 50 inches between the sides. And again, this has to stop on it, so it goes tight to the bench like that. Again, I take the clamps, and then I use the, I think it's a 54-inch rail, the one that comes standard with the track saw. And I just took a couple of 5/16" bolts, and the heads were just a skosh too big to fit in the rail, so I ground them down, just so they just slide in and things fit nice and tight. And the rail's plenty long enough that it overhangs on both sides. And then this just stays in place. It can't go anywhere. It's fixed with those bolts. It doesn't need to be adjusted. And then there's also a curve here from where I've made my cut, so I can see that this line's right up to it. And then my built into these are the sacrificial strips that holds the plywood off my table. And then I toss in my standard strips that I use all the time. And I'll be ripping standard 24-inch or so width, so everything will be to this side. And since I'll be going, feeding it in this way, I'll be needing more support out here. The tabletop with the fence removed helps extend my table. I can cut repeat cuts a little over 6 feet with what I have set up here. These just feed under. And I just pull it tight to the fence and take my stop here. All I have to do is put this right on 30, And that's one of the reasons I like a big stop that's nice and square, because if I push against it, it's not going to tweak at all. So, and that's cranked down nice. And just as a double check, again, you don't really need the tape measure, but you know, you're going to make a lot of cuts. If you make one mistake, you're going to multiply it. So it's good just to double check. And I'm getting about 30 1/8, which is right on, because since I'm cutting on this side, I'm having to account for the blade width. So I know that I'm right on. But I've cut enough with this. I know that it's lined up. And then I just pull the wood to the, push it right up to the stop, and I'm ready to cut. And right on 30, so I'm ready to go. So there you have it. I cut those 6 sides just that easy, and I was taking the time to make the video and go through how I'm doing it. So now I'll go on and cut all my shelves. I'll probably go ahead and cut my narrower sides as well since I'm set up. But you can see it just takes a couple minutes, and I took the time to set this up slowly to show you how I was putting it together. It's really quite quick, and I don't need to pull out tape measures and check things. I know by putting these on right tight to the side and pulled up with their stops, I know that this is referenced right to where it needs to be. The rail can only bolt in one place, and it lines up with the curve, so that gives me a positive index. I thought about putting a hinge on the other end and having some kind of quick release that I could lift it up and down, but it's so quick to set up, and I don't have to worry about any movement. I like this being fixed down, and it's a little bit tight on the wood, which holds it down nice and snug and helps with a little bit more with tear out. So I like the way it works. I'll keep using it. Thanks for taking the time to watch.